Hello, it's Lawrence Romanosky from Calgary, Canada, and I'm shooting from the Lugnuts facility. And what I have beside me here is a 1981 Porsche 928 5-speed. And it is, well, I guess we refer to this as a barn find. And the car does have, I think, quite an exceptional story. Basically, it was the owner, original owner, and only real owner of this car, took delivery in 1982. So the car would have been at the dealership for maybe 3 or 4 months, or maybe 6 months. Drove the car for the first month. I think he put 6,000 kilometers on the car, and then a year later, in around 1983, I think the car had a problem, and he parked the car. It hadn't run properly or hadn't been used on the road since. So this car has been basically parked for 40 years. It came up from an associate of mine who happens to be filming this video. Here, let's get you in the picture here. This is Dale Walmsley. He's our master tech. He's the guy who works on all these cars, including the gull wings and 300 SLs and so on. And he found the car, or got a, and now that you're here doing this, you can probably share if I get some of the story wrong. You got a call with a widow who had a group of 7 or 8 cars and ATVs for sale. And since in Dale's orbit, he was the car guy, he got a call saying, you should call this lady, she has a bunch of cars for sale. And Dale went and looked at them, and this was one of the cars which he bought. So this was owned, or at least the paper trail includes Dale Walmsley, who we worked together. Anyway, Dale did a bunch of work to the car with a friend of his, and they couldn't get it to work properly, at least in the time frame they had, and then I wound up buying the car. It only had 2 of the 5 gears, and it would sort of run, but very poorly. And they went through all the things you do to recommission a car, like draining the fuel tank and replacing the fuel filter, and testing this and that and the other thing, and bought new a rotor and distributor cap and spark plug wires, etc. But still, the car had 2 major problems. One of them is it only had 2 gears, and the second one is it would only run, but very poorly. And so then I took over the project from Dale, and then we incorporated it into the work that we're doing here at Lugnuts, and then I could use them more or less full-time on the car. Okay, so then we went through a bunch of tests on the car, and found out the problem and fixed the problem, and now it's here before you. And the issue was, in terms of the running issue, that when it was started after 40 years, the cam belt slipped on one of the camshafts. It's a non-interference engine, so nothing collided and nothing was bent, but the engine was out of time on one of the camshafts. And so just as a course of the normal maintenance, we would have done the belt, timing belt anyway, but we did that in the water pump, and that corrected the running issue, and after that it runs sweetly. And then the other issue was the gear selector, which what I think happened, what we think happened, is the car was subjected to a rough shift somewhere, which is easy to do because the box is a little bit imprecise in these 928s, and the shift linkage came adrift. That actually on a 928 isn't easy because the shift linkage lies underneath the car on top of the torque tube, which lies on top of the exhaust. And there is a little cup with a nylon insert that fits on a little ball joint at the end of the torque tube that needed to be reattached. And well, that's a real bear to get at. So anyway, the long and short of it is, it had a one-owner car bought in Vancouver. It was driven for a couple of years. The car now has 25,000 kilometers on it. It was parked in 1983. It sat dormant for 40 years. Dale bought it. sold it to me, and then we're both working on the car, Dale on the mechanics, me on the cosmetics, and now for the first time in 40 years, the car, everything functions on the car. Okay, so it's a cool story. Why, you know, there's going to be lots of questions that come up. You know, why did the car sit for 40 years? Why didn't anybody try to fix it? How do you know it sat for 40 years? You know, all these questions are going to come up. What's it like when a 928 isn't driven for 40 years and you try to put it on the road? Will it work? Will it start leaking? All these kinds of questions. So we'll get to all those in the video, and we'll go through them. We'll go through the provenance of the car, the existing paperwork of the car. We've done a really detailed job of detailing the undercarriage, and with photographs and video and so on. So by the end of it, which will be, you know, there's a lot of documentation with this video and photographs and so on. You know, I think we could do a pretty good job of convincing anybody of the mileage of the car and the provenance. But the story was, Dale, you talked to the widow, and I guess her husband worked up north in Fort McMurray, and he was terminally ill with cancer.
Yeah, that's correct. He was.
I'll
Okay, flip that around. Yeah, the story is, she told me he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer while he was in Fort McMurray. Didn't tell her, although he did come home and sign some bills of sale for some of the cars. Didn't tell her he was ill, and went back to Fort McMurray and passed away in Fort McMurray, and she had no idea he was even sick. So it came as quite a shock to her that her husband had passed away, and the company that he was working for or contracting to actually called her and asked her if she realized that this had happened, and she had no idea.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's just an unbelievable story. And then the story doesn't really end there. I tried to contact her a few months after we obtained this car, because she had some other cars at another location, and she was going to find paperwork and stuff, only to find out she had died without me knowing. And she and I were supposed to be working together with getting these other cars and stuff. So just a bit of a tragic story all the way around, but a pretty impressive car.
And they had what are they, like 7 or 8 cars or something like that?
They had, yeah, at least half a dozen cars in an Airstream trailer, and it was parked somewhere out of country. Yeah.
Okay. And then just to relay the story exactly here, so you got the car, and the first thing you did is address the fuel system?
Yeah, drain the tank, replace pump and filter. As it turns out, the pump looked brand new when I pulled it out.
Yeah.
The filter still looked brand new, but
so there's no issue with the gas turning or the gas gelling or anything like that?
No, I think he had put some gas, whatever you call that stuff,
stabilizer
in the tank, if not every year, every couple of years, and the gas was fine.
So it wasn't just like forgotten about?
No, not at all.
Okay, so then and then you placed an order, spark plug wires, rotor, distributor.
Yeah, we did all the ignition stuff, rotor, distributor, distributor cap, spark plug wires, spark plugs. We took the injectors out, soaked them in carb clean for a week or something, just to make sure they were clean, and then reassembled it all, only to find it didn't run any better than when we took it apart, which of course was the timing belt issue, but we didn't know at the time that was the problem. So.
Yeah. Okay. So that's right from Mr. Walmsley's mouth. And then I got the car, and we spent 30 hours. Actually, one of Dale's friends started the process, but 30 hours on the chassis with hosing it down and then cryoblasting it and then toothbrushes and whatever, so that the chassis on this is spotless. The backs of the wheels are spotless. We polished the car. We didn't do any wet sanding, but we did a 3-stage polish. And we've got, just because the car is, we just put the new Pirelli tires on the car now, and it's getting a final polish and then a final photograph session on it. What else did we do to the car? We did all I placed a big order to Pelican, and I did all the vacuum hoses, or
ordered every size of vacuum hose and the rad hoses, along with the timing belt and the water pump. And we did a driving video on it. I took it out for about 100 kilometers, and it's just beautiful. I don't understand how there wasn't like a little bit of pulsation from the brakes, because there was none. There's no vibration in the steering. There's no bearing noises. There's no like noise like release bearing for the clutch in it. There's no ancillary noises. I mean, and you get it up to 100 or 120 kilometers an hour, and it's absolutely smooth as silk and rock solid. It feels like a new car. So the interior of the car is spectacular. All the underneath of the car, I mean, it's got the correct date stamps on the muffler and all the different parts. I mean, this is, I believe to be one of the best early 928s extant, by virtue of its ultra low kilometers, 25,000 kilometers, and original finishes throughout. The leather dash isn't cracking. It's not shrinking. You know, the interior of the car is really just magnificent. And if you just get a shot of the dash and the door panels and so on, I mean, it looks new, it smells new, and all those gaps around the glove box and the center console and so forth, all the stitching lines are straight. I've never seen that before in a leather dash 928. I've just never seen it. They had problems when the car was only a few years old, and you know, I think they even discontinued the full leather dash. So the leather is still like amazingly supple. We see, you know, we'll go through in detail the exterior, we'll go through in detail the interior. This is still, I think, you know, I'm trying to make this a short introduction. Just to describe, you know, how we got the car and so forth. So we'll break this video down into sections. We'll go through all the glass, all the rubber, all the trim. We'll go through the car with a paint meter, and that'll be one section. We'll do the same thing with the interior. We'll go through each piece in the interior. We'll then continue that in the trunk area, the tools and spare tire well, and so on. We'll lift the car on the hoist, and we'll go through the bottom of the car, and we have a driving video, and we'll also go through the paperwork and documentation. So with that, I'm sure it's going to be over an hour, but I believe when you view that whole video, if you can sit through it, you know, you'll see that and agree with us when we say that this is one of the best original 928s in the world. The car, you know, looks like it's a year old, and it drives like a brand new car. It really is quite amazing. I mean, for whatever reason, Calgary, you know, it's not an obvious place to have a classic car. You know, we only get 6 months worth of driving, and in the winter there's tons of rocks on the road. It's not a great place to own a classic car. However, my experience with many low mileage cars is that it's an excellent place to store a classic car. For whatever reason, the climate is dry, so things don't rust, but it's not hot, so the leather doesn't shrink, and just whatever the conditions are in Calgary makes it favorable for long-term storage of the car. This is a 1981, and you know, 25,000 kilometers, so it's ultra low kilometers, but it's not by any stretch the lowest kilometer car that I've had from this era. I had a 1981 MGB with 183 kilometers on it that was basically bought and pickled from new. And that's on my bad history. I sold that on bad. And all the grumpy MG guys were just telling me that, you know, you had to restore the car and nothing was going to work, and everything was going to leak, and it would just be pouring out oil everywhere, and so on. But we got in that car, we did similar things, changed the fluids, changed the hoses, and it drove like a brand new car. And in fact, the guy that did the work was a long-term British mechanic who PDI'd the car when it was new, and who knew the original owner, and told me it drives exactly like a brand new MGB.
183 kilometers. All we did is we just replaced one of the wheel bearings, which made some noise. So, and even in my bad history, there's many cars that have ultra low kilometers. And so for whatever reason, this happens to be a good place to store a car. Anyway, we're thrilled with it. We'll get on with the video. It's broken into sections. You can skip ahead to the paint meter, or skip ahead to the provenance, or skip ahead to the documentation. I'll also do a section on, why I think the 928 is a worthy car to collect. And it may have some new information for you, so I'd encourage you to listen to that. Anyway, the whole video will be broken into a table of contents, so you can, digest it in sections if that's better, or sit through the whole thing. So with that, we'll get on with the video, and thanks to Dale for finding the car, and especially doing the timing belt replacement, which I have 100% confidence was done correctly. Okay, so we can do an exterior walk around on the car, and this will be a slow pan showing all of the chrome, glass, rubber, weather stripping, etc. I've got photographs of all this, but it's nice to see in the video. So why don't we come up here and we can just go through this here. I'll take particular attention to point out any flaws. Okay, so the car did rub something here, and there's a little bit of a divot out of the polyurethane bumper, and a little bit of scuffing, right there, okay? In addition to that, I think somewhere down here, right here, you can see a little bit, it's been polished out a little bit, but something caught the car in this area. Most of it's been polished out, but there's still the remnants of that in the bumper cover. In the nose, actually, while we're on the subject, we'll just go pick out all the flaws here. There were some stone chips that have been filled in, little stone chip there, so a little bit of rash. Some of this is dust, but there's a few stone chips in the paint that have been picked up. Not many, but a few. There was something spilled on it at one point, and this is kind of under the clear or etched into the clear. We didn't want to sand too much off of it or wet sand it, but you can see a little bit of imperfection kind of in the clear coat in the center of the hood. Otherwise, it looks good. On the front bumper cover, there are a couple other chips that have been filled in. We can see one there, and we can see a little scratch there that has been filled in. And there are some sort of minor marks from road chips. All the lenses are clear and uncracked. Headlights look great. From like 2 feet away, you can't notice anything, but if you really get up there, you can notice. We've got a little bit, a couple little marks on the forward edge here of this panel. Some very minor sort of pitting. The lenses look good. Down the sides of the car, it's really, really hard to fault. I don't see any door dings. It's glass smooth. There's no marks on the rub strip. I really don't see anything at all. It's perfectly smooth. Each of the alloys they've not been refinished, and they're in immaculate shape. And of course, the car wears new Pirelli P7s, which are new manufacture to match the original P7s, and they came from England at great cost. But they were the right tire for the car. Okay, so looking at the windscreen, we've got a little pit there, 2 little pits there, and a couple other very minor marks. There's no cracks or anything. And what's amazing to me is this rubber is still supple. Like it's not, you'd expect after 40 years for this to be hardened, and it just isn't. Like this rubber, I don't know if you can see that, but it's still really soft and pliable. It feels like it's brand new. This trim piece around the windscreen is still in good shape. The clips are in the right place. Even like this vehicle was parked 2 years after it was rolled out of the showroom. And even these wiper blades, it still feels supple. We didn't change these. These are the original wiper blades, or at least that we got the car. I think they're the original wiper blades. Okay, so we've got the headlight nozzles, and sometimes these break and they're in nice shape. We still have the satin black coating that hasn't been chipped up on the wiper blades. Okay. The mirrors are in good shape. You know, sometimes these gets filled with wax, and they turn kind of white, and they're still a nice black, and there's no broken lenses or anything. The trim around the windscreen is all, I don't think it's painted. I don't know if it's anodized or what it is, but it fades on some cars. It's all perfectly, looks new, looks brand new. And again, the rubber is still supple all along, okay? Sometimes with the door handle, you get all kinds of scratching and marks from, you know, rings and watches and nails and whatever, and there's none of that. Sometimes when people aim with the key, they miss, and they mark up this, you know, the surround for the key, and it isn't. Sometimes when, you know, people aren't careful with the doors, you know, you can chip up this area of the door, and there's a couple really, really, really tiny marks, but it looks, you know, basically new. I see there's a few of these, just really, really small, faint scratches from something, but you have to get within like inches to see them. We can look inside the car, and you know, if you've ever had any problems with the door shut, you know, you can see some chafing or scraped paint along the door catch, and of course there isn't any. It's originally, of course, a Canadian car. The sticker is platinum metallic, and the VIN of the car is there. These have never been removed, and the sill, you know, these can get, you know, scraped up. And we see some really, really minor scratches maybe on the top of this, but otherwise it's all still in lovely shape. We'll get back to the interior. The weather stripping is still supple. Even the felt surround for the sunroof still has lots of nap in it. It still looks new. Again, all of the window surrounds in the rear of the car. Trim looks new. The rubber's supple. The antenna works. We have, again, you know, like reasonably supple wiper blades. It doesn't feel, they just don't feel old, and yet we haven't replaced them. Headlights are all clear, they're not cracked. In the exhaust, we see a little bit of gravel rash on the side of this exhaust heat shield. You know, slight discoloring from I guess these would have been all black, new, and so there's a little bit of discoloring from the exhaust pipe. What we don't see is gravel rash on the trailing edges of any of the wheels, which you know, normally the rocks get flung up, and there's no mud guards or anything, so you'd expect this to be chipped up, and it isn't. And we can look at the front as well. You know, this area here, these aren't rock chips. It's just, I think it's just some wax that's caught in there. You know, there's a little bit, just a little bit of marking up. You can see a little bit of rash here, just starting. You know, but again, that's why they put this protective pebble finish undercoat on it. And you know, these fasteners and so on that are like right in the spray from the wheel, they are not corroded. Okay, we can see the VIN here, which of course matches the VIN in the door sill and in all the paperwork. We can take a look at this wheel, and again, it is perfect as well, as is the underside of the fender lip, which normally gets chipped up and starts to corrode and rust and so on. And you know, we only see a very, very slight evidence of wear, you know, maybe a little bit right there. Otherwise, it still has the original paint. Okay. These bumperettes, we can see a slight little scuff there, and looks like we can see a slight, it's not discolored, but you can tell that something might have just touched that. Otherwise, these are in good shape. Again, the key surround looks good. It hasn't been, you know, jabbed, you know, by the key. We see the trim around the windscreen in good shape. The clips are in place, and only the very, very slightest discoloration on the back of the wiper. The other taillight is in good shape. Again, there is no rash on the bottom of the car, amazingly, and we can look in the gas cap, and we see the, you know, the protective flap that still looks new, and we also see that, you know, the finishes on the hinges and stuff like that, look brand new on this car. All right, the rear quarter window on the passenger side, again, the trim looks perfect. The same thing with the trim on the passenger window and the key aperture and underneath the handle, and there's no chips on the rub strip. There's a couple little marks on the back of the passenger mirror right there, just tiny little pits from rocks. Again, it's very, very clean right behind the wheel, and there's just nothing there, or on the inside of the front fender. So this, I mean, this looks like a car that you bought at a dealership, 1 year old, with 10,000 kilometers on it, that the sales manager drove and you bought it as a demo. Like, that's what, and I've sold Porsches like that because I sold Porsches for 10 years at a dealership. And if you had a 1 year old car with 10,000 kilometers on it, in Calgary at least, it would look like that. That's what this car looks like, only it's not 1 year old, it's 40 years old. So it's just an unbelievable, unbelievable condition with all of its original paint and trim and rubber and finishes, and it still looks brand new. It really. Okay, so now we'll do a paint meter report on the 1981 Porsche. This device is set up in micrometers, which is 1/1000th of a millimeter. Original paint from the factory is usually between 150 and 200 micrometers. So that would be, you know, 1/5 of a millimeter approximately. When you get a repaint, generally it's in the 3s and 4s. Like 300 micrometers or 400 micrometers. And on an older car that might have some, you know, wavy bodywork, and they use a high build primer and then block it, you know, you can get up to about a millimeter. If you start getting things that are over, or readings that are over 1,500 micrometers or 1.5 millimeters, that indicates some filler. And if nothing comes up at all, you know, either you have a plastic body panel or fiberglass body panel, or there's quite a bit of filler in it. So with a 928, I believe the doors are aluminum and the bonnet is aluminum, and the rest of the car is steel apart from the bumper covers. So we're looking for paint meter readings around
you know, anywhere from 100 to 200 micrometers for original paint, and anything over that, it's had some paint work. Sometimes you get the odd rogue reading, just the way it sits, but we're seeing 204, 173, 222, 201. Sometimes the aluminum panels have a little bit thicker primer than the steel panels. So we're around, on the hood, we're around 1/5 of a millimeter. And now we check the front fender, driver's side, and again, we're all clustered around the 200 micrometer mark. If we hit the front bumper cover, of course, you know, nothing comes up. All right, so the side of the fender. Also, the way the paint lays on the car affects the readings slightly, because if the paint runs off, it might collect on, you know, more a horizontal surface. So you got to keep in mind that we're talking, you know, very, very small differences. The difference between 100 and 200 micrometers is, of course, still just 1/10 of a millimeter. Okay, so we'll get the door. So everything's consistent there, 162, 160. Also, if the car is polished, it's pretty easy to take off a little bit of polish as well. So you can see these numbers, all between 1 and 2. Now this area here has a kind of a pebble texture undercoat, so that's going to be a little bit thicker, and we can see that is, you know, in the 400s. So that should be fairly obvious that this is a thicker coating for protection. And so we'll see, you know, numbers in the 4 for the lower sill with this undercoating on it. Okay, and then the door, though, is in the 2s, or around 2. Okay, so the rear quarter. Again, all in the 2s. And let's just go down here. Again, down here we're expecting a bigger number because of the undercoating. And then back to just the regular paint in and around the 2. The hatch cover. In between 1 and 2. And then this is plastic. Nothing comes up. We'll check this quarter here. And the 2s. I have a similar vintage Mercedes with all original paint, but with higher mileage that's been polished a lot. And now I'm getting readings under 100 micrometers, meaning there's some parts of it are actually getting thin from being polished. So this one is new, but still actually fairly thick, meaning, you know, I'm not sure for original paint. So I'm not sure, you know, we polished the car, but I think it's only been polished once. So we're in the 2s. So, you know, this car really just hasn't been touched. Okay, so the front fender, and again, everything's clustered around 200 on the car. And let's try the roof. We definitely don't want to see a bunch of high numbers on the roof. Okay, and this is the hatch. Again, so we've got a car with, you know, original paint throughout. Just to demonstrate that, let's just walk over here.
You know, this Mercedes has had a repaint of the hood, and it's in the 3s, okay? And you can see that, you know, you can see chips here where, you know, there's paint underneath. And so if I put the meter here, you know, 246, you know, 341. So generally, if you do that, if you repaint the car, it's in the 3s and 4s. If you take something like this, 300 SL, which has had a Concours mega dollar restoration, again, you get 4s, 8s, you know, you get higher numbers on a classic car like that, where more effort is, you know, you've got old panels and a high block filler. So on an old car like from the 50s, you expect, you know, higher numbers, but that is, you know, this is a first-class paint job from Coachworks in BC, so one of the very, very best in Canada, and that's the number you get there. If we come back here, this is a late model Porsche that's had nothing ever done to it, no paint work, and it's a 4, which means it has 3M on it. George, did you put 3M on the rear fenders of your car?
We did a special one. So what we did was we brought it around. There's no, because it comes to here,
Yeah.
and you don't really need it, but it would take it on the fender lip. So we had to do a wrap around the.
So this is 3M, right?
Oh, this is 3M, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why, sorry, I'm just demonstrating. Yeah. That's why this is a 4. Where's something that doesn't have 3M on it?
Not this one. This one's 3M, that one isn't.
All right, so this doesn't have 3M, and then we have the 210 number. Okay. Just in case anybody's wondering. Okay, thank you. Okay, so like when you have a leather interior and leather surfaces, you know, they take all the, you know, the interior pieces and they cover them with leather and put an adhesive down and wrap them and put them in the car. Now cars like that from the 80s are really susceptible to that leather, either the adhesive coming off, and mostly what happens though is because of heat and UV, the leather shrinks and it pulls back and then it starts to lift. So it's very rare, almost impossibly rare, to find an 80s Rolls-Royce or Aston Martin or any of the other cars that had complete full leather interiors where that leather has survived. And redoing that work is incredibly expensive. I mean, if you wanted to do the interior of a Rolls-Royce or something like that, you'd need 5 or 7 hides at $1,500 each and 50 to 100 hours of labor at $150 an hour. We're talking, you know, $20,000 and $30,000 bills to redo the leather in certain cars. When I sold Aston Martins, which also had a leather dashboard, sometimes when they were new, but sat in a hot parking lot somewhere, the leather would already start to shrink. And under warranty, before we delivered the new cars, we were replacing parts of the leather dashboard, okay? So when the 928 came out, the interiors were all leather covered, but they soon had problems with it and warranty issues, and they went away from full leather interiors in, I think with the 4-cam engines in 1986 in North America. All of the early 928s I've ever seen with leather interiors, you can see evidence that it has shrunk. And where you see that is in, over here, I'll show you. Where you see that most obviously is in these areas here where the dash leather shrinks and the leather on the glove box shrinks
and then all these lines start to look really wonky, and the leather looks all really uneven. Also, the leather tends to pull from the vents or pull from the front, and then you see it pulling away from the vent area, okay? So it's an extraordinary find, and if you look at this car carefully, in these areas where you have all of the hand-stitched leather, because all of these pieces are leather, and then the dash is all leather in various pieces, and the leather is still really supple, and it is not shrunk, and the gaps between the leather-covered panels are all still uniform and straight and even, and I've never seen that before with an early 928. And you would not be able to bring any 928 back to this if the leather was dry, if you needed to replace it, you know, short of sending it to Paul Russell or Bruce Canepa or something, okay? So, and that would be a massive bill. So this car was a real find because the leather is in such nice shape. Now we'll go over to the driver's seat here. So there is no, we can look at this line right here. I mean, normally on, and get it from here. So normally on any driver's seat, you see the bolster wear, which usually starts in this area, which of course people catch when they sit in, and you start to see this wear here. And this car has never been touched up. It's never been repainted, like the leather hasn't been re-dyed. This is the original finish on the car. It's never been touched. And we only see, you know, the very, very faintest evidence of wear on the car, okay? And we also, you know, we can see a little bit, there's a little bit of a mark there, and that's about it. Now we see the leather, we see this leather wrinkled a little bit, and what this is the foam underneath the leather deteriorating, because it would have started off looking like this in the back. I'm sure nobody's ever even sat back there. And so, you know, this, I think with some age, and, you know, obviously people sitting in it, what happens is that the leather or the foam underneath there loses its form a little bit. And then you see these wrinkles in the leather. But the leather itself is not marked up or wrinkled. It's just a little bit of deterioration in the foam. And if you really wanted to, you could replace the foam, okay? So if we look at the interior here and the door panel, you know, we don't see any scuffing. We don't see, you know, these panels, of course, or these door pockets. They're susceptible to breakage, and they're still in good shape. I think we see this a little bit, so, you know, for whatever reason, this piece has come out, you know, a little bit. Okay, and that's the only thing I can find with the interior of this car. You know, every piece still fits nice. Every piece of leather, and it covers everything, is still supple, is unmarked, hasn't shrunk, and still looks new. We can see, you know, the leather again. All these pieces are covered, and all the seams are straight, and there's no evidence of the leather peeling up. If we look at the headliner as well, you know, the headliner's not sagging. It's not water stained. You know, the visors aren't faded. There's no marks on the bottom of the sunroof. We don't see any, you know, marks on the steering wheel. Sometimes, you know, if you have rings or something like that, it can be a little bit chewed up, or on the top of the gear shift. If we can look in on these buttons here, you know, they're still bright. I mean, I think we see a little bit of wear from the white paint on the one passenger window button. The other ones all look good. The carpets in the car, you can get in there, look absolutely brand new. Like, it doesn't look like anybody's ever put their feet on them. The pedals don't show any wear. You know, the dead pedal and the carpets in there, and you can see that in the photographs. I mean, they're a little bit gray. I didn't try to put Armor All in them and just, you know, dress them up or anything. That's just you know, soap and water. There's thicker, let's just go, I'll show, follow me over here. So there's these
over mats, which have been in place, and so there's a little bit of wear to these thicker mats, but they've completely protected the carpets that are in the car. Let's look on the passenger side. And if we can just go in and look at all the carpets into the footwell and so on, and just do a pan underneath there. There's not a mark on any of the carpets. They look brand new and they feel brand new. In fact, like I said, the entire car gives the impression of like a 1-year-old demo, and I'm not exaggerating. I really am not exaggerating. There's a couple of little divots in the leather on the center console or the rear console. And the back seats don't look like they've been sat in. I think these areas are probably vinyl. I don't think they're leather. And then we have unmarked headrests as well. If we go around to the back of the car, we can see as well the carpet area and so on looks like basically brand new, and as well does the parcel shelf, which comes out. All the tools are in place, the spare tire and so on. It's a bit of a pain to get in there, but so we have photographs of all that, and spare tires unused. All the tools are in place, etc. The weather stripping for the hatch is still supple. There's no evidence of water leakage. And none of these Teflon pieces have deteriorated. None of this looks like it's ever been apart. We will look under the hood now and just go through that. And if we focus in on the engine, it's been thoroughly cleaned, and it's pretty spotless. To go through all the mechanics, that's all in the written description, but the car has been completely recommissioned, and so we did the timing belt and water pumps, and we did all the water hoses and vacuum hoses. Went through the ignition system and went through the fuel system. It has a new radiator. I kept the old radiator because it just had a little repair to it, but we were uncertain as to whether it would hold or not, and so we just put in a new aluminum radiator, but the original comes with it. You can see it's got the original finishes on everything. We have not tried to go in and spray paint things and make it look better than it is. So I left all these finishes. But it's spotless, and the only thing is we didn't change the hood pad, and this is deteriorating, because it's 40 years old. So if you wanted, somebody could go in and replace the hood pad. Otherwise, it's completely stock, and it looks looks like it did when it came out of the factory, almost. I mean, there's some oxidation to some of these parts here, but we could have just replaced all them, but we decided, since it was original, just to leave it alone. And there's lots of pictures in the gallery, or close-up pictures, and while we were doing the work of the new timing belts.
So I thought I'd show a quick video of the parts that came out of the 928. And why I think that's interesting is that people are going to be wondering about the degradation of the rubber components in a 40-year-old car. And so I wanted to just shoot this little section showing you what came out of the car, and why I think it's important, because these pieces are still supple. I mean, this is the radiator. This is one of the radiator hoses. It's not dried out, it's not cracked, the ends aren't splitting, and it's actually amazingly supple. Like it doesn't even feel
It doesn't even feel old. This is the original timing belt, and you know, if you read online about timing belts coming out of old cars, or you know, that have been, you know, sitting in one position for a while, you know, you kind of come away with the impression that, you know, they're fraying and on their last life or last legs, and you know, they're about to just come apart. But when we got the new belt, it was more supple than this, for sure. But this one doesn't look too bad, and like I said, it's still reasonably supple, and there's no evidence of any cracking. These were the vacuum hoses, and there's a little bit of fraying. That's from the cryoblasting that we did, which is tough on the fabric. But you know, if you look at the ends here, you know, they are just not too bad on any of these pieces. So why I think that's important is that obviously this isn't every single bit of rubber that is in the car, and the car still has some, you know, some original rubber pieces. But I don't think I would be afraid that, you know, they're suddenly just going to disintegrate on you, because every other rubber piece that came out of this car, with the belts and so on, is actually still in pretty good shape. The tires were dry cracked. They were the exact same tires, the P7s, but of course we replaced those.
Okay, so let's go through the provenance of the car and the ownership history and the documentation that we do have. And let's start with the owner's book, the service manual, and we see that in June 4th, 1982, the first owner took delivery of the car, ending in 1469, and this fellow was named, it was Ernie and Karma Biena, and I believe they registered it on behalf of their corporation, which was ESJ Enterprises Inc. They were in Coquitlam, and they bought the car from Westminster Volkswagen. All right, so we can then come to the dealer stamps, and this is all from the same dealer, Westminster VW Volkswagen in BC, and then again he takes delivery in June 4th, 1982 with 20. And then on June 11th, a week later, he comes back with 1,400 kilometers, and then that's an oil change. And then there's a second stamp. I'm not sure the difference between those two, but anyway, on June 11th, he comes back with 1,400 kilometers and gets the car serviced. Now, also of great interest is the fact that on July 21st, 82, so literally 6 weeks later, the car comes back for a speedometer replacement, and this is at 5,824 kilometers. And so he must have drove this car a lot in the first couple of months, and then we can see that is stamped by the same dealer. So the car has 19,000 and change kilometers on the odometer now. That's what it reads. To that we need to add the 5,824. Of what the original odometer had on it before it was replaced. And of course this is, you can see that it's stamped from the dealer, and I don't believe there's any question that the mileage of the car is the indicated mileage of around 19,000 kilometers plus the 5,800, so around 25,000 kilometers. So we also have a maintenance sticker that is in the driver's door jamb showing an oil service from the same dealer, Westminster Volkswagen, in March 31st of 83, with an indicated 4,100 kilometers on it. or about 10,000 kilometers total. So that is we believe, the last time the car was seen prior to it coming out of long-term storage. Okay, so that's that. Also, we have this pre-delivery certificate that also is in the name of Vienna. And then I can show you the Carfax, the Canadian Carfax, which again shows in June of '82, the registration was renewed. And then at the end of May in 1984, the registration expired. We conclude sometime before June 31st, 1984, the car was not driven anymore, okay? Okay, and subsequent to that, I have a bill of sale here where Ernie sells the car from his corporation, ESG, to himself. He's now moved in Red Deer. That's in December 1985, and now the car is parked and in storage. I understand they towed the car from BC to Red Deer. Then he develops terminal cancer and signs this open-ended bill of sale without a buyer, without a price, just saying he sold it and, preparing, leaving it open for the rest to be filled out. It never was, because it was sold by his widow to Dale from the widow, who's Karna, and then the car sells to me. Okay, so that's the ownership. That's the ownership history of the car and the documentation of the speedo change. Okay. Also, we have a stack of invoices for all the parts that we bought for the car, which we did in-house. I don't have a service invoice from that, but I have all the parts invoices, and of course pictures of the parts that came out. Okay, so I hope that is helpful in establishing or corroborating the ownership history, mileage, and speedo change.
So overall, okay, what I think we have here is one of the best early 928s extant. We have a car that looks almost new, except for a few, imperfections or evidence of careful use. We have a completely corrosion-free undercarriage with all its original fittings and original exhaust and so on. We have an interior with leather that still looks and feels and smells new. Driving the car, it feels like a new car. There's no pulsation in the brakes or vibration from the steering or bearing noise from the wheels. There's no exhaust rattles. There's no interior rattles. It really is quite amazing. I think you could even argue it's better than a new car, because lots of new cars I've driven have rattles in them. So we have a real time capsule car, something that really could have just come out of the showroom. I mean, maybe it's got a year of wear on it, but not more than that. And a real time capsule car from an important car for Porsche. This was like a technological tour de force that paved the way for many technological advancements. So I think what this car did was, created the idea of a sports and GT car that could be both, that was miles ahead of anything else produced at the time. I mean, that Mercedes 500 SLC was the top of the line. Just show that. That was the top of the line Mercedes offering in 1981. It literally is from a different era. This car, would have been seen as like a spaceship. People who drove it, the journalists who drove it in period, said that it just made everything look antiquated. And so I think it's an important car for Porsche. I think this is, like I said, one of the best original examples. So with that, I hope you've enjoyed this long video. If you've
watched the whole thing. Thanks for making it that far. And this is a preview for the Bring a Trailer auction, so we'll see what it brings. But please like and subscribe, and thank you very much. Lawrence Romanosky from Calgary, Canada, shooting from the Lugnuts facility.